welcome to The Nation. I'm Jessie CHAHAL. Air travel connects the world, but maintaining passenger safety requires precision, dedication and continuous innovation. When we board an aircraft, we entrust our well-being to a complex network of systems, regulations and skilled professionals. But the question is, what happens behind the scenes that makes flying one of the safest modes of transportation? Well, today, let's take a closer look at these strategies and efforts that uphold aviation safety, from operational procedures to regulations and oversight, perhaps. To help us navigate this important conversation and to share insights into how CAAM is safeguarding the skies for all passengers, we are joined by someone with extensive expertise in this field, DATO Captain NORAZMAN MAHMUD, CEO of the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Cap, thanks for being here and thanks for doing this with us.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you for inviting us.
In light of some of the crashes that we have seen end of 2024, one question that really surfaces now are the safety measures. As the CEO of CAAM, can you give us an overview of the current safety measures that are in place within our nation's aviation industry that really helps to ensure we're all safe up in the sky?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Jessie. If I'll take bits and pieces of how we do regulatory oversight, it might be a bit complicated for the general public to understand.
Right.
But I will try as brief as possible to actually summarize the whole ecosystem of regulatory oversight. It all started basically from the flying school, but we skip the flying school part because we also do an oversight on flying school where people start to become pilots. Engineers also we oversight. The air traffic controllers also we oversight. So what actually in regard to your question is what the public confidence in flying commercials.
Right.
So what I'm going to tell you a little bit of ecosystem, how the airlines started, how it evolved. So the first step, if you want to open airlines or something, you have to go to the economic regulators first. Why is it important for the economic regulators to actually look into your business model? It's not just to curb competition or whatever, but part of it that actually concerns us in CAAM is actually in maintaining the safety and security. You need money to maintain safety. You need money for the maintenance. So the economic regulators basically will review the business model, how they're going to do in the next 5 years, how many aircraft they're going to maintain, how many crew, all these people must be trained, and then training, maintenance, all needs a good plan and cash flow.
Right. So, and the emphasis for safety really starts from that point.
From that point, yeah. Okay. So once the economic regulators give us a conditional approval, then only it will move to CAAM as the safety and security regulators, right? So we go to the 5 phases of how we're going to approve the airlines, right? The first phase is, of course, pre-application, where we meet, and of course we want to know what side of operations, what type of areas, what type of aircraft. All this is just a preliminary. That's the first phase, very, very basic, basically. Then we move to the formal application, where all the documentations must be submitted. That is phase 2. Okay. Then we go to phase 3. Phase 3 is normally where the challenges comes in, what we call a document review. Everything that you want to do must be documented. The document must comply to the regulations. So we have 19 annexes. So it covers all the operations, right from the first annex, which is personal licensing, right to Annex 19, which is a safety management system, right? So the document review is normally quite a lengthy process. So normally when you set up an airlines, you need people who know how to produce this type of documents. And these people, what we call nominated post holder, must be approved by CAAM. They are the people who are what we call chief pilots, accountable managers. They must have the qualifications, they must have the experience to actually run an airlines. And they are part of what we call it the extending arm of CAAM. They are also our eyes, because we cannot be monitoring the airlines 24/7.
Right.
So once we approve them, then we go through the process of approving the manuals, because the manual will give you the guidance for all the staff to follow. You know, they have tons of manual in the airlines basically, right? So once we pass that, when we do the inspection phase, this is where we actually inspect your base, your office, your maintenance setup. All these things have to go to that. And the last phase is certification, right?
Which will need obviously to be updated from time to time as well.
Of course.
Now with these steps in place and firmly in place, are we at a point where globally we need to look at aviation reforms?
At this moment, the process is basically quite standard all over the world, that we follow the ICAO standard recommended practice. But after the fifth phase that I was talking about, the certification phase, right? It doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. The certificate we give has a validity. No, that validity is normally once you initially when you're starting, of course it won't go for a few years, and then we do a yearly oversights on them. That means we can go in at any time. You know, we a mandatory oversight for every year that we have to go to ensure that they are actually complying to the regulation, complying to the manuals that we approve in terms of process and procedures. So it is a continuous process. And when we talk about safety management system, Annex 19, where we also approve the documentation, within that setup itself, there is a safety management system where you have to do mandatory reportings, right? So it is mandated in the regulations. Anything happen, you must report to the regulator.
Right. I take you back to a month ago, towards the end of 2024, when unfortunately we saw an uptick in aviation incidents, both locally and globally as well, raising, of course, concerns about public safety and operational standards. What you've shared with us clearly shows that there are strict standards that are in place and that must be adhered to. But what do you believe are some of the primary factors that have contributed to some of these incidents, especially the tragic incidents, and how is CAAM addressing them?
Okay. Of course, I spoken before that we learn a lot from accidents and incidents. From there, we create mitigations so that it won't happen again in the future. So very rarely that you see in aviation similar cases of incident happens, because the mitigations are put in place immediately to avoid such a disaster, right? And in ICAO, where they are actually producing the standard and recommended practice for all the aviation stakeholders to follow, of course they cannot even guarantee a zero risk. There's always risk, but what we are trying to do is actually to bring the risk to as low as possible. Complying to the regulation is one, but as the aviation progress, the technology is always progressing, right? So we need to keep up with that. The safety need to curb some of the, we don't want to curb innovations because of regulations, but there must be a very tight oversight. We learned a lot from the Boeing incident, for instance. Before this, some of the requirements are not there, but from the incident, we put up extra requirements to avoid similar case of incident, and after that, you see none similar case of incident.
You touched on something, a very important word, and that is, how we apply tech in this era now of big data and of course AI as well. Where is that steering this sector as we move towards big data? Okay,
for CAAM, for instance, our bread and butter or our core business is basically an oversight. So since 2020, we are actually moving into what we call, the normal people say is big data. But last time when we do audits, is we just bring a form and papers. The inspectors basically can just ask anything under the annex. So some of the questions are not consistent, all these things. So when we move into what we call a compliance questionnaire, there are a set of questions, a few hundreds of it, in the certain protocols of the area of the operations in the airline itself. So it's all electronics now, right? There is a set of questions. The question is based on what regulations. From that regulation, we also produce what we call guidance material, civil aviation guidance material, to teach, to assist the stakeholders, the aviation players, how do you comply to that regulation. So these are collected over the years. I think we have almost 4 years of big data. So this is when a solid data in aviation, and it's probably about 5 years, right? So now we can improve in terms, once we analyze, because last time you remember it's file.
Right.
When it's done, it is put
Manual.
in the file room,
yeah,
right? And then people will forget. Oh, I think 2 years ago you did something not good. So, but when it's data and then you can analyze data, you can move towards what we call risk-based analysis. Risk-based, that means to a certain airlines, these are the weak points. To a certain airline, these are the weak points. So we can see the trend. So we are using that. So at the end of our target is basically 2027, we have a data warehouse, not just on aviation players,
right.
for students, for pilots, for engineers, everything is there. So using AI, you can do analytics, you can predict, you can become proactive instead of reactive.
Right.
Yeah.
AI aside, how are technology advancements also helping in terms of aircraft design, systems, and of course safety features?
Yep. Good questions. I'm not an engineer, but what the OEM is giving out now, they're producing an aircraft which is about almost 10 to 25% savings in terms of efficiency. And of course, this all using technology, right? The technology is always improving to make sure, number one, of course, is safe. Number two is efficient, because the target for the aviation is zero carbon in 2050. So part of the basket that we need to improve is actually the aircraft technology itself. So I think the current technology, the AI, plays a very important role in terms of simulating. Last time when you build an aircraft, you probably have to fly thousands and thousands of hours to test the aircraft, to check the efficiency, to ensure the integrity of the aircraft. But now it's getting lesser and lesser, because there is a system that's capable of actually simulating that kind of thing. So it's helping the environment as well. You don't have to fly for thousands of hours. You can use technology to improve efficiency and of course safety.
In terms of safety as well, how does CAAM go about in terms of ensuring that just not just the airline but also airports are meeting the safety standards?
Yep. So as you know, we are also regulating the airports. So we give out the certificates to the airport operators as well. Our main duty is for the airport itself, besides safety, is also security in terms of the access into the airport. But on the safety side, we have to ensure that all the, of course, again, the compliance to the regulation. And so far, out of our 26 airports that we certify, they are in compliance to the regulations. But the compliance just cannot stop. It has to go on. Things like when you see the line faded, it needs to be repainted. When you see a signboard that is blur, that pilots cannot see, it must be changed. So we need to ensure that kind of things are going on as well. The continuous compliance to the regulations. And funny enough, normally when you fly, when you see out of the window, right, you see grass. Why we are so, strict about grass? Because what kind of animals sitting in the grass? It's the birds.
Right.
The birds, actually, when they get scared, they are in the bushes, in the long grasses. They hear an airplane coming, they just go up and probably hit the aircraft. It's just as simple as maintaining the grass. You know, it cannot be too short, it cannot be too long. Too short, probably the birds can see all the worms. Too long, the birds will.
Do we need the grass?
Of course, we need the grass. One of the property, because if you put concrete or something like in the overrun zone or something like that, it probably a bit more difficult. It is better to have some soil at the end or in the emergency end of the runway to actually stop.
I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot here. We talked about safety, security, and so on. But in the event of a crash or a hijacking, how prepared is CAAM for such scenarios in terms of coordinating response to these emergencies?
Okay. In CAAM itself, we already put process and procedures where I mentioned the safety reporting things, that mandatory reporting things. So once we receive a report, we have AOC, EOC, sorry, Emergency Operations Center. I will lead normally. I'll become the chairman of the operations. All the directors in all divisions must be there so that we can gather information. We are also the lead for civil aviation search and rescue. So we have to coordinate with all the countries as said, PDRM, RMF, Maritime, but we are leading, we are coordinating in terms of search and rescue. And of course, once an incident or accident happens, we need to, of course, save life first. That is number one, search and rescue. That's number one priority. But in Malaysia, the organisation itself, we have AAIB, Air Accident Investigation Bureau, which sits under Ministry of Transport, totally separated from CAAM, because CAAM also can make a mistake. So they need to be not biased in terms of giving out their reports. But for AAIB to give out a report, the preliminary report, for instance, Jeju, you mentioned, is 1 year. Prelim is just a basic, just in case that the whole world needs to know this is the immediate mitigation that you have to do to avoid similar cases of incident. But their timeline is, according to Annex 13, which is under investigation, is 1 year. So sometimes we can't wait 1 year. So inside CAAM as well, with all the divisions, the technical people that are involved, we need to do our own investigation as well, to give up cautions. Look guys, we are suspecting these things happening. This incident because of this and this and this. So we would advise you to actually take an immediate corrective actions if these things is happening within your organizations. So besides, rather than waiting for 1 year for the actual report to come in and with all the safety recommendation.
Right.
And chances are, the immediate things that we found is actually normally similar to the AAIB reports, normally similar, but we need to act immediately, just to avoid similar kind of incidents.
We look at some of the air crashes that happened last year as well, and with the airline you just mentioned. In fact, at one point, was a role model in terms of safety. So at this juncture, do we then not trust the airline altogether, or how do we make sense of something like this and feel again that we are safe to fly? Okay,
I think for the public, when you talk about safety of an airlines, there's so many the current technologies. You can actually do a bit of research about which airlines is which. But as a regulator, we are always guided by the regulations that we put out there, and for not just for Malaysia, for all over the countries, all over CAA, Civil Aviation Authorities, they are following the similar kind of regulations that needs to be complied. But for the public, like I told you, the assurance of the oversight, safety never sleeps. You must do the right thing even nobody is watching. It's a culture. It was put up right at the very beginning of the flying school. If you talk about flying school, you have to have that safety culture. I cannot be watching you 24/7, but that's the culture that already exists in the airlines. But of course, culture needs to improve, needs to get better and better. Do the right thing when nobody is watching.
That's That's right.
Yeah.
Some really good quotes there you have for us, Captain, that, you know, you have to maintain responsibility, accountability,
Yes.
transparency as well as integrity when you are in this sector as well. While airlines and all play a significant role, what can passengers themselves do to enhance our safety during flights? I know when the safety announcement is going on, generally people
Nobody
are not
pays
paying
attention.
Are there any sort of, you know, programs or initiatives by CAAM to really raise this awareness among travellers? More so now, again, when you have social media and you have some sort of safety breaches, and you know you have technology on the back of these threats.
Media actually plays a very important role in terms of awareness to the passengers, right? But whenever you fly, you see the card that says, here's your life jacket, where's the door. Even that card is oversight by us. We approve that so that we ensure no information is amiss. But for the passengers, number one is, of course, please listen to the crew. The crew is there. The main purpose of the crew is not really to serve you food.
Right.
They are there for safety. They are trained for safety. Every year they go for recurrent training of all the emergency procedures, and the requirements is actually for them to assist the passengers to go out within 90 seconds. Within 90 seconds. So for the passengers, of course, as a captain, I will always tell my passenger, please wear your seatbelt all the time. Don't loiter around.
We just wait for that light to go off, and then it's
a simple
comfort.
solution for me. I just put on the seatbelt all the time. But then you say, what is the captain's doing?
Yes.
Because this thing you can't see. Clear air turbulence you can't see. The world are changing. The severe air turbulence, clear air turbulence is becoming a norm now. Previously, 10, 15 years ago, the world's a bit calmer. There's no El Nino effect or thing. But now we are noticing
plays a role
climate change, the climate change. And for the passengers, I think keep your seatbelt sign on. Listen, I mean, you read the pamphlet as well. All the emergency informations are there. Be aware of your surroundings. You know, if you hear something different, call the crew. You know, tell the crew. Sometimes the crew are busy. You hear hissing sound. You smell something funny. Things like that, you can actually inform the crew so that we can do further investigations. You know?
What we've also seen sometimes going viral are passengers not behaving or not willing to comply when they have either just boarded the aircraft or already up in the air. What sort of legal consequences are there in place for such passengers, and how does CAAM address the situations?
They can be charged. There is an act for unruly passengers. And the cabin crew also are trained to actually restrain excessive behaviors in flight when they becomes a bit more aggressive to the crew or even the passengers. They are trained to restrain the passengers. So the process and procedures normally, the commander or the captains of the flight will be informed, right? And then of course we inform the ground. The minute we land, the guy will be handed over to the police for prosecution. And in Malaysia itself, there's so many cases already. Probably it is not hot enough for people to know unless you are, you know, like somebody was removed a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Yeah, from the flight, and he's famous. Then people know some of these behaviors are not acceptable in flights. You know, that can endanger not just the aircraft, but the other passengers and also the crew.
You have a heavy responsibility on your shoulders as you head up CAAM as well, and on the back of your experience, knowing what could be some of the safety gaps that are out there, knowing what's already in place that is firmly helping to keep people safe, as well as the entire aviation sector. What would you like the people to know today?
I think my biggest challenge as a regulator, as an aviator, is actually to change culture. That is what I want to change. Because safety is actually a very boring, very dry subject. Nobody wants to listen to safety unless somebody very close to you got involved in an accident and, you know, passed. So unless it affects you like that, it affects me because I have lost many, many friends. Right? So changing the culture, not just to the aviation players, but actual to the normal public, that you have to take aviation safety very seriously. Like I say, do the right thing when nobody is watching. Try your best to comply. We as a regulator, we are not there as a punisher. We want to guide you to actually comply to the regulation. The regulation is good for you. You know, you might not be flying, but your parents, your loved ones might be flying. Yeah. It might not affect you directly, indirectly it will affect somebody very close to you. Changing the culture right from the very beginning, right from the flying school. Right?
Well, changing the culture, staying aware, also really understanding, you know, in terms of the safety precautions, what needs to be done, always preparing, because you never know when tragedy or you know, danger might strike. Well, thank you, Captain, for coming in here and having this conversation. Today's conversation has shed light on the incredible work and dedication that go to ensuring passenger safety in aviation, and we hope that this discussion has given you a better understanding of the efforts that go into keeping our skies and all of us safe. I'm Jessie Chahal. We'll see you next time on The Nation for more in-depth discussions and conversations that matter. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.